Welcome to It's Just Middle School with Sarah and
Kelly. If you're joining us for the first time today, we are two fabulous veteran middle school teachers with middle schoolers of our own that love talking about middle school.
Our passion is to support parents and educators in understanding the middle school years through research, experience, and casual conversation.
If you're returning to our show, welcome back. Let's jump into this episode's buzzword, homework.
Why do teachers give homework?
Does homework really improve academic achievement?
And should I, as a middle school parent, help with homework?
I'm low-key gonna crash out on this homework. What does that even mean? Like, what?
Scenario 1. Parent perspective. To be successful and to get into college, students need to build their resume. It's not just about academic achievement, but it's about the diversity of experience. My child needs to show his strength of character and a versatility in interests and passions. He is going to Harvard. Homework is getting in the way of that. Students are already getting 8 hours of academics in their day. Why do we need to add more into the evening? I need the evening to cultivate my child's other interests. Homework is a thing of the past. It holds little value these days, and my kid does not need to subject themselves to meaningless busy work that research has said doesn't help them anyway.
Or, as a teacher, today was supposed to be a solid 45 minutes of English class. You planned a 10-minute warm-up activity to build on the lesson from yesterday, a 5-minute mini lesson on writing with a 10-minute practice, and then a solid 15 minutes of reading together, getting through the first chapter of our class novel. Then a fire drill cut the last 5 minutes of time from the lesson. The secretary phoned in to release a student from the day about mid-reading. The student that volunteered to read out loud needs to work on fluency, mental note. The painful pace was felt, but then another student shared the same pace. You stopped every once in a while to check for understanding, as trained in best practices of literacy development, but you questioned whether the students were truly able to get into the reading zone. So you think, maybe they can just do that at home. I mean, it's a better environment for reading, so you assign the rest of the chapter for homework. Scenario 2, parent perspective. We did our typical after-school routine as Justin walked into the house. How was your day? Fine, he says. What's something cool you did today? The science experiment was sort of cool. Did you do anything kind at school? Yeah, I helped clean up at lunch. And do you have any homework? No, I finished it in class. I had gotten the same response since school started. Most nights he comes home with little or no homework at all. I remember having a ton of homework in 7th grade. Why aren't teachers giving homework today?
Or, from the teacher perspective, the class averages for this test were just so low. I don't think they're studying. I'm trying to give them less homework because 1, half of them won't do it or they lose it because they're middle schoolers, and 2, they have so many extracurriculars that it's 8 at night before they set foot in their house for the first time, and they just don't have the physical extra time to do it. But I still need them to look over their material and study. They need to be using the flashcards we made, or reviewing the math problems, or just reading over the vocabulary. That time is so valuable. What's the balance to help these students be academically successful if they don't put in the time to study? In our first scenario, a parent shows intention behind their child's schedule. There is this idea of time taken for school and time needed for extracurriculars. What truly happens within the 8 hours of a school day? Why is there homework to begin with anyway? In the teacher's viewpoint, there is a need for quiet space for students to read independently. Does reading count as part of the homework load? The parent in the first scenario assumes homework is meaningless. Would that parent see reading or perhaps studying as valuable homework?
In our second scenario, a parent's frustrated with the lack of homework because she just feels like something's missing. Her student's doing okay, but he could probably be doing better. The teacher's also frustrated because something needs to be improved, and her rationale is that if she's giving less homework, the students are going to have more time to study. But that's not really what the results are showing. However, most students do not instinctively know to study as homework. Teachers also struggle with students taking homework seriously, and many don't really care about it. It never returns or just comes back incomplete. So today, let's take a look at the topic of homework, the pros and the cons.
And now for a wee bit of research.
To begin our research segment, we thought we would bring up research backing the 10-minute rule that we had initially thought was from a Duke University study from Dr. Harris Cooper. And we looked at an article over it published in 2016 with the title, "Is Homework Good for Your Child's Brain?" Dr. Cooper was being interviewed, and he talked about how in his studies in the 80s, this 10-minute rule, this 10-minute homework rule, was common practice among teachers, calling it the wisdom of teachers from years past. And what essentially the 10-minute rule is adding your grade level times 10 would be the amount of homework expected and required or considered appropriate
right,
for each grade level.
So a sixth grader, an appropriate amount is 60 minutes.
Right, and a seventh grader 70, eighth grader 80, and so on.
Up to 2 hours.
And
that was the cap.
And I had thought that was an actual study. Essentially, it was just collected years of experience. And then what was interesting about the article was that it also talked about how research backed it up afterwards.
Right. So the practice was actually done for several decades. Mm-hmm. And then they did the study to see if it was true. And the study proved true.
Yeah.
So how about that?
That was quite fascinating.
What was happening in education was already there. Good practice.
Experience matters. Yay. Mm-hmm. But then we found another article published recently in 2024 on how homework, how this study revealed that homework has a really strong impact on academic achievement. So this was in 2024.
Right. And the study was actually done in Ireland with Irish students, and it was focused on middle school students. And what they found was that especially in the math and sciences, that frequent homework was actually very important to academic achievement. And they gauged frequent homework to be 3 to 4 times a week for about 15 minutes. And now again, that's just math and science. That we're not talking about, additional reading involved in the study, but just those things. And it found that when they did that, it really did improve the overall success of the students. It helped retain retention. That's kind of redundant, but right. It helped with...
But retention's part of it, right? And help retaining information from the day to day. But it helped balance their schoolwork with activities. So by avoiding long homework assignments, they were able to do those extracurriculars that our right. first scenario parent kind of worried about.
And it also said it helped with stress because they expected it. Like they knew they were going to have short bits of it, and it wasn't these overwhelming tasks that were going to be needed to be completed in the time frame. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was a fun one, especially since it's more recent with all the debate about homework. So this is a recent study that was completed that really did show the benefits of homework.
Then have you ever read From a Campfire to a Holodeck by David Thornburg?
I have not.
It's what it essentially, and we're going to talk about technology in our next episode, particularly with AI literacy, but this was pre-AI, I think published in 2016 thereabouts. And he talks about David Thornburg in From a Campfire to a Holodeck. Combines a different learning spaces because of technology being intertwined in the school setting, and the spaces he talks about are this giant metaphor of going camping, right? This adventure of learning. And so if this metaphor continued, you have the campfire, which is the instructional space, the teacher as a storyteller, an inquiry on the knowledge being shared. And then you have the watering hole, which is a time of collaboration and connection, kind of experimenting and exploring this just conversational experience. And then you have the cave, which is quiet reflection over those interactions, very independent, very isolating. But then the next moment would be the holodeck, where technology allows for the application of that said knowledge or exploration done. And what I think homework is, and again, we're going to talk about technology in the next episode, but I think homework falls in the cave.
Yeah.
Where you have that sense of independence in a safe space or learning space.
We've had to take a time out from it.
Time out.
From with other activities, with other things, and then you go back to the task. So there's reflective space in there, and there's a time to build. Do I still remember what I was even supposed to be doing?
And also to process, because if you're in that collaborative space of the classroom, you don't necessarily have that headspace to think independently, right? Because there's all this social interaction with middle schoolers, particularly. Like they're worried about, will someone like me, or is so-and-so mad at me? And sometimes that takes precedence over the content.
Absolutely.
And so when they have that quiet space where they contemplate,
not to mention some of the distractions that take place, like in our scenarios.
Right, a fire drill, or I got a dentist appointment, so my mom's pulling me out early. There's all those interruptions too. But I think that cave idea and that metaphor of how learning operates best is crucial in thinking about homework as that time, or that designated time,
absolutely,
to reflect.
Right. When we compiled this research and we kind of looked at it as a whole, there were several major pros and of course several arguments against homework. But some of the overall pros for creating time for homework were to reinforce learning, to develop responsibility and time management. It encourages the independent learning. It involves parents in the learning process. It gives you guys an idea of what's going on in their world. And it really does help students prepare for exams and tests and individual performance activities that they are going to be tasked with in their life.
I think the reinforces learning goes back to that frequency piece, because you can reinforce learning with hours of homework that's not going to do anything.
Right, but it's just going to stress kids out.
Right. So that reinforcement of learning is that small chunk of practice work, and so not to give like 30 problems over one night, but maybe 5. Right.
Yes.
Something that's short and
and that goes with
helpful.
The shortness, like
right.
More often, but less duration of time.
Yeah.
So there should be mindfulness put into an assignments also on the teacher's part, because you don't want to overload them. 30, like you said, 30 practice problems of math is not going to be effective. But you can see the same thing in 5 problems that were strategically picked to make sure they get the concept of the day.
Right. I think intentional and meaningful practice work with short durations is that reinforcement. I think there is that work ethic that you're instilling with supporting a segmented of time in the day for that quiet reflection or quiet study. It's almost as if it's self-awareness, right? That you are becoming aware if you do know it or if you don't know it well.
And what are you going to do about that too?
Right.
Like that's another thing where sometimes there's a frustration that happens when we don't know this. But really, we need to take that self-awareness piece, if you don't know it, and follow up with the teacher. Or that's a great time to, relay to your kids, what are some questions that you can take back tomorrow? You didn't know how to do this. Let's circle it and say I tried and write notes around it or whatever. But yeah, I think it does help to be self-aware in that aspect. But I also think homework helps students, the time management piece is always a big thing for me. And like being responsible for making sure, is it in your book bag? Like when you finished it, did you put it back in your book bag? And make sure you give it and put it in the right place when you take it in the morning, and is your name on it, and all of those things.
Or if you have an assignment that's spread across a week period of time, can that helps as well with the intention of helping with any time conflicts or scheduling conflicts, that such as reading, for example. Can you read these 2 chapters within this time frame of 3 days or 4 days? Then it gives students that advocacy and that control in divvying up themselves based on their own scheduling. Mm-hmm. But then what happens with middle school always happens when you give a week of time, they save it to the last minute.
And there's a procrastination piece. And they're like, now I have this, and this I'll do. And
that's a crazy learning opportunity. Yes. It is a learning opportunity for them. And that's going to happen. And then how we navigate that as parents is crucial to set them up for success later.
Because the first thing we want to do is freak out. Like, how did you leave this to the last minute? What were your teachers thinking? Like,
I've done
all of those things,
times.
right? Like, we as teachers and parents, we also do those meltdown moments. But you really just kind of have to step back and be like, okay.
What is feasible that we can do now?
Right. Like, this is the time we're given. What can you actually do? And what is really required on the rubric? Because they almost always come with a rubric. Like, what do you really need to get this done in this amount of time? Yes. This is...
And maybe we can ask for an extension because, right, like that's always a possibility. Worth asking. Mm-hmm. You never know. I think it's worth asking. If a student says that they were jam-packed over the weekend and yes, they waited last minute, but they thought they'd have more time, could they have an extra day? I'm more inclined as a teacher to say yes with the heads up than
and even most teachers still have a late policy.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes 90% is better than a 0%.
Yeah. Just take the late grade. Mm-hmm. And it's, again, those
a learning
experiences of middle school. It's just middle school. It's not going to overly affect the grade any for these minor mistakes. It's about learning from them later on.
Absolutely. And learning to not procrastinate as much. Sometimes we need those moments.
You need those. I know that's learning from experience. Mm-hmm. The best kind of learning is from experience. And as painful as it is, it's going to serve better in the long run.
And some kids need that more than others, depending on the kid.
Yeah.
Like, you might have one kid that can knock it out, and they don't even need you to help time manage their life. And then your other kid is a struggle bus, and they need you to be in their planner every day of their life. And you got to navigate those two worlds differently, too.
Yep, and that's going to happen. And so going to that fourth bullet point on the pro of homework is that involves you in the process as parents in their learning, which is great because you want to see what they are doing and how they are progressing in X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. As a parent, that does stress me out too because I was working with my daughter's math, and I can do math, but math changed. So, we used to do,
how math is taught has changed. There's lots of different ways to do math. And we learned it as this is the one and this is the only. So now that they're learning lots of ways, sometimes
which is great.
It's like, I don't know how to do this particular way.
But I've never felt so dumb.
I don't know how to do this way. What do you mean you can't just carry the one?
Yes, just carry the one.
But if that's not what my teacher told me to do.
Right.
So meltdowns start occurring again.
And if you're
you get frustrated.
Yeah, and then your kid gets frustrated and it's like a crying fest.
So sometimes just asking questions to help is more important than you knowing the right answers. I have I don't know, policy rule. It's not really a rule. It's just a statement that I make to my parents at the beginning of the year that if something is happening and it's 10 o'clock at night and the day has already gone and there's a frustration moment, just email me. Just email me 10 o'clock at night. I'm not going to see it till the next morning. But go ahead and email me to let me know that there's a good chance your child is not going to have their homework done. They tried. It didn't end well. But for the sake of everyone's sanity, you're going to pack it up. And just let me know. And that means I know to check it in the morning or have a conversation about it in the morning. Or not make them feel bad about
defeated
it when I see that it's not done. Because there's seriously, you didn't get your homework done, but now I know to tread a little more gently.
Right.
There's grace that can be given when you know situations.
Right.
So that communication piece is important.
And then that homework can prepare for exams, and then we live in a test-driven world, and unfortunately,
they're not going away.
I don't think it's going away, because you need that data, as well as that's your objective understanding of how things are going, right? That's your accountability for student improvement and student achievement. So homework can help, especially in preparation for exams, because you're setting up a time frame that's routine to get homework done. And so when that time comes up, it's like, oh, I have to do something. What can I do? Oh, I can go over my notes. I can look at best study practices, and continue thinking about this material so I'm best prepared for future assessments in the future.
And this also brings up something as a parent that I've had to learn, is to remind my child that when I ask them about homework, I need to also rephrase that as saying, or do you have anything to study for? Because they don't inherently think that studying is homework, because it's not something that was directly assigned for that night, because maybe it's in 2 days, maybe it's in 3 days. So it's on their back burner. And also it's not necessarily paper pencil. It's not a me do, it's a me review.
Right. And I think middle school specifically, they're learning study strategies, what best works for them moving forward in their academics. And so they might learn one way to study in the first quarter of 6th grade, and they might learn another way to study in the second quarter of 6th grade, and they're testing out different approaches
that work for
them, and then that work for them or that don't work for them. And that exploration of what works and what doesn't has to be in what Thornburg called the cave, right, where they are
that can't be
focusing.
done at school.
It really can't. We can make flashcards, but then the actual seeing and testing if it works,
that has to be done independently in a different setting.
So what about the cons of homework? I've heard so many pros. We probably should have started with the cons and then gone into the pros. Maybe. We're going to talk about cons anyway.
this is where we as teachers hear, well, my child couldn't get this done because, right? Or and there are some research. There is obviously research out there to back up the cons of homework. So things that you should watch out for, because they can cause stress and burnout.
Yeah.
Especially I think that's if the lessons are long, like if there's an overabundance of too much. I know at our school we really do try and communicate the homework piece. Like, how much are you giving homework in science? Are you giving homework in social studies? What's the overall take this week on what's going on? So we really do try and take out the stress of it, or with the overwhelmingness of it.
And I think there's the concept of a flipped classroom.
You might do that sometimes.
Yeah, you might have heard of that, or we've done it before. And this mindfulness of what usually there's a video to watch or a longer lesson to review. I think and
then they do the practice in class.
Correct. And so as long as that video of instruction is short, right, and not the length of a class, whole class, right, then it can. But I can see teachers using that flipped classroom and saying, well, I'm going to do a 45-minute video that they watch at home. I think that's what causes stress and burnout, because that is the time-consuming piece. So if it's short bursts, it's great. But if your homework is as long as the class, then I think that's a problem.
And homework as a collective also can be different. So if your child's doing 45 minutes of homework and that's covering all their academic classes, that's not unrealistic, according to the 10-minute rule that we feel. But if they're like doing 45 minutes of math and then 45 minutes of science and 45 minutes of social studies and then reading for 45 minutes, there's definitely where conversation needs to occur between you and their teachers.
Yeah.
The second one is, there's the argument that it limits free time and extracurricular activities.
And it can.
That's where the balance comes into play a lot.
Yeah.
I know.
And communication.
Right.
Because I think there's like a pace of the school, right? Of a unit of time. There's a pace within the discipline over when you're going to have a heavier load of homework, such as with English class, maybe there's an essay that they're working on over the week. that might come home for additional time that is sort of self-driven, based on what the expectations are and the outcome that the student wants, that can take a ton of time.
Do your kids do homework in the car?
Mine, yes.
Mine do a lot of homework. I always keep pencils in my car because they're trying to, in order to try and just get it done so they have more free time at home,
Right.
or if there's a lot of extracurriculars that night, they won't try and knock it out in class or in the car.
Yep.
To and from places.
Or reading. We can put the audio file of their book as we're going off to school.
That would be good for my daughter because she gets car sick, so we can't do a lot of the reading.
Right.
She can do the homework piece. Like, she can do math problems, she can do short articles, but if she's got to read a chapter from one place to another, that's not going to be good. I get car sick,
yeah. But audio works. And it's, again, those short bursts of time, to using that time wisely. But then there's that flow as well, because then you might have less homework, as your scenario pointed out, or as our scenario pointed out earlier, too, and where you needed that time for studying, and that might be a lighter load in terms of content, but heavier in other aspects.
Number 3 is it's not always effective for learning. Some can argue that homework doesn't always translate to improved academic performance, although most of the research we found for secondary education did show the counter, as long as it's short bursts and it's frequent and things like that. So if you're seeing that it's not really effective, again, I think that's where that communication piece comes in. And like, I wouldn't start a conversation with your child's teacher as hey, this isn't effective. Like, you might want to try a different angle there. But maybe go with the length, or what can you help me understand the purpose?
Or just I'm observing these behaviors in my child. How can we help my child improve in a way that isn't causing stress, frustration, anxiety, or
Absolutely.
time? I think that's just the reality of that need for communication is crucial there. And teachers are the kindest people in the world.
Yes, most.
My favorite people.
Number 4 is that there's an inequity in home support, and that is true.
Yeah,
we do see that in a lot of assignments, or students come in and say, I didn't know, I couldn't do it, I didn't have anyone to ask. And usually we already kind of know situations like that, and we're ready to help in those difficult situations. But I think that's not a majority.
Right. I agree. I think
when the expectation is set that homework needs to be done, students complete it.
Right. And then when that expectation isn't met, those conversations are happening between teacher and parent already to kind of help support in whatever way the school can.
And sometimes it's just a parent saying, you just need to try and do this. Like, whether it's right, wrong, whatever, you just need to try and do it. Whereas a student's thinking, I don't know the correct answer, and I need you to give me the correct answer.
Right.
And it's not necessarily about being correct. It's about, like you said earlier, being self-aware of what you do and don't know.
Right.
And if you don't know it, then that's a whole different aspect of the story that we got to figure out.
Right. And which goes into the number 5th reason for against homework, is that it causes strain between parent and child. I mentioned earlier, my daughter will never listen to any advice that I have, but I can ask questions to see where she is, and then relate it to the teacher. I think that has helped that relation. That
How would your teacher
strain.
do? What would your teacher do?
Right. Do you want me to email your teacher for you, or do you want to email in middle school? Can you email the teacher and just let them know that you're struggling with this concept, and I'll drop you off early in the morning so you can meet with them if they're available, or stay after school for a little longer. I'll pick you up. My son was in middle school. He would not like to stay after school. It was like the worst consequence, but of not understanding. But ultimately he didn't have a ride home, so he would have to, right? So it's that sort of force. And
sometimes if you make it where they don't want to, they start magically doing it on their own.
Right.
Sometimes there's a consequence put in place of, I'm going to tell your teacher, or we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then magically they figure out a way to do it.
Right.
It's kind of crazy how that works. So overall, this debate on homework is, we're not trying to solve it today. It's very complex. It's individualistic to your family. But what we did notice and what we did see overall is that in middle school, going into high school, homework does have its purpose.
So, Kelly, this is our part where we give advice, and I wanted to talk about this chore that I actually love and hate at the same time. I hate laundry, but you know what I really, really love to do?
What is that?
I love to make my bed directly after cleaning the sheets and snuggling in those covers. It's so cozy.
It is.
It makes laundry worth it,
The
whole time. Because I really despise this chore. It's very tedious sometimes. But when it comes to...
But I love the fresh made sheets.
It feels so nice, right? It's like the best feeling. What we're doing, I hope you see this, is that we're using...
We are getting to the point.
We are getting to the point. If we replace the word sheets with homework, there really is... It's the same kind of feeling, right? This idea of tediousness with laundry, but then you have those moments of, aha, this is so cozy and so warm.
The
and
final product
is not
aha!
This metaphor that we're using, I think, really pertains to our discussion and debate over the benefits, pros and cons of homework. So we're going to take the acronym SHEETS with a Z at the end, like the gas station, to think about how we can support homework and the use of it and its need and benefits.
And help you as a parent try and wrap your brain around creating some positivity with it.
Right. So we are going to make our bed. Dun, dun. All right. So with S for sheets, we have shifting mindset. I think that is pretty key in this kind of what we hope to accomplish today for you as parents or early educators is just to shift mindset on homework, to not see it as time consuming, but having benefits in its frequency and its small duration.
Correct. Because when you frame it more positively, your kids pick up on that. Mm-hmm. And it just becomes a more peaceful situation overall.
Yep.
If everyone's looking at it, not so much as a chore, but as we're hoping to get a better outcome at the end. We want to snuggle, we want to snuggle in the sheets at the end. Might not be great during the wash time, but we just want to snuggle in at the end.
H for help, not do. So as parents, we tend to want to make sure that everything is right with homework. Particularly, I'm thinking of math, right? Like, let's make sure all the math problems are right.
Let me look your paper over.
Or essays, let me look your paper over and proofread it for you. And
then correct everything.
Correct. Let's not correct, because the idea is that if we do it and do the corrections, then the student doesn't really benefit from that homework process or seeing their own mistakes in some cases.
And sometimes it can cause conflict at home. And it's not necessarily conflict that you need at 7 or 8 o'clock at night whenever you get to sit down when your child gets to sit down to do their homework. It's helpful to look it over if you want to know what they're doing during their day. But correcting every single thing kind of kills the confidence of a child sometimes.
Right.
Even though our intentions are great. And I'm speaking from experience because I do this with my daughter. When I start to overcorrect, she starts feeling defeated and wants to just throw her hands up in the air and walk away.
Right.
And then we sometimes can get into a battle. So that brings us to E.
Ease off. Let them make mistakes. And we talk about in earlier episodes asking questions, right? Kind of leading them to an answer, but not harassing them with questions, not like goading them with questions, but just letting them make those mistakes with guidance.
Absolutely. And if you notice that maybe there's an overabundance of mistakes, or there is just so much that a child is bringing home that they're not doing, then the other E is for encouraging communication with the teacher, reaching out to the teacher and just explaining what's happening at night, giving them an idea of where you're coming from at night. And the same token, they might be able to explain some things that they're seeing in class as to why they're bringing home so much homework. Maybe there's some unproductivity during class, or they just do need some additional practice.
Or coaching your child to get that extra help because you see a pattern forming. As a parent, you can start coaching your child to email and create that communication within teachers or for their teachers to allow that conversation of improvement. I'm still struggling on this concept. Can I come see you at the after school today to review this one idea that I'm just not getting? I think that is that encouragement.
Encouraging your student to take ownership of their learning is really important as they're walking through this journey of middle school.
And homework makes that realization happen.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's its value is that it makes that
because sometimes
awareness.
they don't realize they don't understand it until they get home and they're in the cave. Like we talked about, and they're like, oh, I really didn't get this. I do need more assistance.
Right, because it's better to correct it and give them that communication lens now before they are in that silo when taking an assessment and it might matter most, right? So in those practice sessions that homework can be, that's when that discovery of, I don't really know this yet.
And I loved it this week. In this example, I had a parent message me in the morning and say, hey, we were working on this homework. He asked me a question. I couldn't really figure it out either. I told him to come talk to you, but just in case he forgets, can you make sure to initiate it? And I was like, great. And guess what? He did remember. Totally remembered all on his own to come find me and search me out. But it was good to have that heads up.
Yeah.
So there's that encouraged communication.
Yep, and I'm glad that happened. And if you didn't have homework, you wouldn't have that experience or have that opportunity.
I didn't know.
Right. And then time. Think about structuring that time in your child's afternoon for routine to plan homework, to get homework done. But even if there isn't any homework, that routine that's set for homework time can also be used to help study for upcoming assessments, to help pre-plan, to help communicate with teachers. Like it's a sacred time that doesn't necessarily need to be for the assigned homework if there isn't any homework assigned,
but for studying also
and communicating and collaborating where needed. It just becomes that routine, that expectation.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be right after school. It can be any structured time that works best for your family. It does help. Routines really do tend to be more beneficial for students. When they know what to expect, then you're not doing a battle. And then our final piece of sheets was our Z, and it's sleep.
Because we're cozying up in our
sounds like we're
bed.
bees, but yes.
Sleep.
Sleep is so important for the middle school brain, especially... Well, one, it's when we are actually processing and sorting our information from short-term memory to long-term memory and kind of making our little files happen in our brain. But also to remember that middle school sleep patterns start to shift, and they want to stay up a little bit later. They also want to sleep in a little bit later in the morning, and that's not always conducive to every school schedule. So understanding that process and trying to work through getting them the right sleep that they need in middle school.
And it's truly, as the brain develops, studies show it sleep is incredibly important, between 8 and 12 hours. And I think that's crazy long when we think about our sleep schedule as adults, but it's really crucial for students to get a quality sleep framework or sleep time for them, and they will fight it. They it is a conversation about screen time, screen use, because I do know students that will have a bedtime and then they will wake up or stay up with that blue light on with their phones or with their screens and stay up. I know a lot of my students will forget to do something digital for homework, and it's all time stamped, right?
Right.
And so they're
see the timestamp at 2 a.m.
Right.
Like,
and
why
so
are you sleeping?
Right. And so parents will ask, why their child isn't doing well on this particular outcome of this practice work for homework, and I can look it up and look at the timestamps, and I see that they're up at 2 a.m. because they didn't get home for practice, or they just forgot about it, and that's worse than not doing it, because then they can't cognitively process the information the next day. And so sleep is so crucial, even if it comes at a cost of not doing work. I think that's, if we pre-plan that homework and have that routine and that sleep time becomes easier to do.
Absolutely. And we're not saying that sometimes this stuff is easy. No. Plans get tripped up, schedules get changed, kids are going to different sporting events or extracurricular activities. But the more as parents we try and plan ahead and help them manage this time and create a sense of positivity around it, it does make it easier.
Mm-hmm. I think the metaphor of making our bed is also this idea of pre-planning if that plan goes horribly wrong 1 week, right?
Yeah, we can start over.
Yeah.
You can redo the laundry and make the bed again.
Yes.
Wash the sheets and try again.
We've made our bed this week. Let's make it better next week.
Absolutely. Tuck in that corner a little bit more here and there, Exit ticket time. Exit ticket time.
It's just middle school. Homework is for retention, practice, and reflection.
It's just middle school. Yes, frequent and short duration, preferably, can impact improvement in academic achievement.
And it's just middle school. Help with guidance, but do not do or correct.
Thanks for tuning in and allowing us to once again share our passion for middle school with you. Hope you enjoyed this episode of It's Just Middle School
with Sarah
and Kelly. Join us for our next episode when we cover what's happening with AI.
The ultimate disruptor in education.